It's late. Your thoughts are awake, settling close, inner somniacs. It's the holidays. You're standing in the kitchen where you grew up. You want to make tea, but you find yourself hesitating, not asking permission exactly. That would be too obvious. Just hesitating, waiting for a pause in the conversation to mention it, gauging whether now is a good time, wondering if you should offer to make some for everyone else first. You sleep in your childhood bedroom, and it feels like sleeping in a hotel. Not uncomfortable exactly, just temporary. Like you're occupying space rather than inhabiting it. Your suitcase stays half-packed in the corner. You close the door gently, conscious of the sound it makes. You're careful about when you shower, when you eat, when you come and go. There's this quality of monitoring yourself, of being aware of your presence in a way you're not aware of it anywhere else. Somewhere along the way, imperceptibly, you became a guest in your own family's home. It's subtle. You participate in family dinners. You laugh at the right moments. You answer questions about your life. From the outside, everything looks normal, but inside, there's this constant low-level awareness. This sense that you're performing a version of ease you don't quite feel, that you're a guest being gracious about the accommodations. How did that happen? And what does it mean about who you are? Tonight, let's sit with this feeling that doesn't have a clean name. It's 3:05 a.m. You need the bathroom. You remember which plank squeals, so you step over it, then catch yourself. This is no heist. Still, the choreography returns. The half-second pause, the weight shift, the held breath. Your muscles memorized the routes that kept the household asleep. Those routes are no longer necessary, but they are grooved into ligaments. You find yourself timing things. Showers, meals, phone calls. Trying to fit your rhythms into the household's patterns rather than simply existing according to your own needs. You're aware of where your things are. You keep them contained, organized, out of the way. There's a carefulness to how you move through the space. Not dramatic. You're not tiptoeing or whispering. Just considerate in a way that feels slightly effortful. Like you're being a good house guest rather than someone who lives there. And the strangest part, you don't decide to behave this way. Your body just does it, like muscle memory for a self you thought you'd outgrown. Meanwhile, in your own apartment, you exist without thinking about it. Your presence doesn't require justification or careful choreography. But here, in the house where you grew up, there's this constant quiet negotiation happening. This monitoring, this awareness of yourself as someone taking up space rather than someone who belongs in it. The space itself remembers you differently than you remember yourself. Your childhood bedroom is exactly as you left it, or close enough. The posters might be gone, replaced by something more neutral, but the desk is there, the bookshelf, the particular way moonlight falls across the floor, the view out the window that you memorized, back when this room was your entire world. It's preserved, almost archaeological, a fossil of a time long gone. And when you lie in that bed at night, you're surrounded by evidence of who you used to be. The books you read at 13, the trophies or ribbons or certificates from a version of achievement that mattered then. The closet, still holding clothes from a body that was yours, but isn't anymore. Every object is a timestamp. Every corner holds a memory of someone you barely recognize as yourself. The room knows things about you that you've since forgotten. It remembers your younger fears, your smaller dreams, the person you were before you left and became whoever you are now. You belong to this room in your history, but you don't belong to it anymore. You gravitate toward your old bedroom more than the common spaces. When you do join everyone in the living room, you choose the same spot, usually not the most comfortable one, but the one that feels least intrusive, because your family relates to you through a lens that was ground years ago. They ask about your job, your apartment, whether you're seeing anyone. Surface questions. The kind of questions you'd ask someone you're getting to know, not someone you've known for decades. They tell the same stories about you, anecdotes that capture who you were but say nothing about who you are. And you notice they're not curious about your interior life, about what you've been thinking about, struggling with, learning, about the ways you've changed in the time since you last saw them. They're not asking because, in some fundamental way, they still see the child, the version of you that existed before you left. You've had entire transformations they know nothing about. You've unlearned things, rebuilt yourself, become someone more complex than the person they remember. But that evolution is invisible to them, or irrelevant, or perhaps too threatening to the stability of their understanding. So they relate to you through the old framework, and you feel it, this fundamental misrecognition, this sense that you're being seen and yet remaining unknown at the same time. It's not malicious, of course. They're just doing what families do, holding an image that was formed long ago, expecting you to still roughly match its shape, but you don't. And the gap between their perception and your reality is part of what makes you feel like a guest, like someone visiting from a life they can't quite see. Here's what happens beneath your awareness. The moment you step through that door, your nervous system shifts, subtly, almost imperceptibly, but you can feel it if you pay attention. Your shoulders carry tension they don't carry in your own space. Your breathing is slightly shallower, your voice changes, not dramatically, but enough that you'd notice it if you heard a recording. This is your body remembering what this place required of you. Whatever pattern you developed to survive and belong in this system, your body hasn't forgotten it. And when you return, it activates automatically. A program running in the background, shaping your behavior before your conscious mind even registers what's happening. This is why you feel like a guest, because you're unconsciously performing the role this house taught you to play. And that role, careful, considerate, slightly self-erasing, is the role of someone who belongs conditionally, not unconditionally. There's a split happening inside you. Let me show you what I mean. There's a concept in psychology that illuminates what's happening here. The distinction between your true self and your false self. Your true self is your authentic experience, who you are when you're alone, when you're with people who truly see you, when you're not managing anyone's perception of you. Your false self is the adaptive persona you developed to meet expectations and maintain belonging. It's protective, necessary even, but it's constructed for external consumption rather than internal truth. Here's what I think happens when you return to your family's home. Your false self gets reactivated. The version of you that learned to function in this specific system comes back online. Meanwhile, your true self, the one you've been cultivating in therapy, in your own apartment, in relationships with people who see you fully, that self retreats, goes quiet, waits. Because this environment wasn't designed for it. These people don't have the framework to recognize it. The family system needs you to be who you've always been, because your evolution would require them to evolve too. So, you split. You're physically present, but essentially elsewhere. You're participating, but from behind a protective distance. This is the guest feeling, your true self visiting a place built for your false self. And the discomfort you feel is your authentic self refusing to disappear completely. That discomfort isn't dysfunction, it's integrity asserting itself. Which brings us to something we need to talk about. We have this cultural story about coming home, about how returning to your family should feel like relief, like belonging, like finally being somewhere you don't have to explain yourself. But that story assumes that both you and home have remained essentially unchanged, that the space that knew you at 10 can still hold you at 30. It can't. You've grown past the shape of this place. You've become someone who needs different conditions to feel at home. Different levels of honesty, different depths of conversation, different permissions to simply exist without justification. The house is the same. Your family is the same. But you're different. And that difference has nowhere to go here. So you exist in a threshold state, between worlds, neither fully one thing nor another. When you visit, you're the child they remember and the adult you've become. You're from here, but no longer of here. You're connected by history, but separated by growth. This in-between state is inherently uncomfortable, and the longer you stay, the more acute it becomes. The more exhausting the performance gets, the more you feel yourself fragmenting. This is why visits have an expiration date for you, why you start counting down the hours, why leaving feels like finally being able to breathe fully again. So where does that leave you? What does home actually mean now? Here's what I want you to consider. Home isn't where you came from. Home is where you can exist without translation. The house you grew up in is geography, history, origin. But it isn't necessarily sanctuary. Sanctuary requires recognition. It requires space for your full self, including the parts that have emerged since you left, the parts that don't fit the family narrative, the parts that complicate their understanding of who you're supposed to be. And if that recognition isn't available, then no amount of shared history can make a place feel like home. You know this already. You know it in the way you breathe differently in different spaces, in the way your body relaxes when you're finally alone, in the way certain people and places allow you to exist without editing yourself. Home is a feeling, the felt sense of being able to exist without performance, without constant self-monitoring, without wondering whether you're acceptable. And that feeling, you found it elsewhere. You've learned that home is something you build, not something you're born into. And sometimes those two things align, but sometimes they don't. There's grief in that realization, sure, but there's also freedom. So, no, the guest feeling isn't evidence of failure. It's evidence that you've successfully differentiated, that you've developed a self distinct from your family's expectations, that you've grown strong enough to notice when an environment can't hold your complexity. Most people never reach this point. They stay enmeshed in the family system, living out assigned roles, never fully separating. For them, returning home feels seamless because they never psychologically left. But you did. You individuated. You became someone who exists beyond the framework your family created. And that's why it's uncomfortable now. Your evolution disrupts their equilibrium because systems resist change. They pull for you to return to the familiar shape that keeps everything stable. But you can't fit back into that shape anymore. You've become too large for it, too complex for it. So here's the permission I think you've been seeking. You're allowed to limit visits, to leave when you need to protect the self you've built rather than sacrificing it for the performance of easy belonging. You're allowed to feel like a guest in your family's home. You're allowed to not feel at home there. You're allowed to feel distant from your family and still love them. You're allowed to outgrow the place you came from. And when you finally return to your own space after a visit, when you close your door and let out that familiar exhale, maybe you'll recognize it for what it is. Not escape. Homecoming. Not to where you were, but to who you are. So tonight, walk freely to the bathroom. Let the boards whistle like a kettle. Walk on the offending planks and feel the house adjust to your new weight. And with that, drift off or dive deeper. I'll still be here in the quiet hours, Insomniacs.